BNB spoilers. Dylan is Luna's accomplice, not her killer? Luna Nozawa's death on The Bold and the Beautiful is starting to look more and more suspicious. Luna's alleged killer Dylan will pay Dr. John Finnegan, Tanner Novlin, a visit next week on the soap and try to bond with him over his daughter's death. Bold viewers are convinced there's more to Dylan's story, and they might be right. Did Luna send Dylan to her dad's house? Here's what is coming up next week on Bold and the Beautiful. Spoilers down below. Dylan confesses to Elektra. Soap fans instantly recognized Miss Dylan on Bold and the Beautiful when she showed up on Elektra Forrester's, Linnea Grace doorstep. She was the art teacher at the beach house when Luna shot Liam Spencer, Scott Clifton, and her grandmother Sheila Carter, Kimberlyn Brown. New B&B spoilers hint Dylan might not have been in danger at all during the Aiel Giardino killer's latest attack on Steffi. In fact, she might have even been working for Luna the entire time. Is it possible that Dylan didn't run over Luna Nozawa and she's helping the inmate fake her death? A lot of details were left out when Luna Nozawa's most recent death was announced. Where is her body, and will there be a funeral? Was there an autopsy report, and was the body identifiable? Most importantly, was the victim of the accident recognizable, or could it have been a Luna look-alike? If the Bold and the Beautiful rumors are true and Luna is still alive, then that means someone had to help her fake her death. Enter art teacher Dylan. If the body was mangled, it's possible it was someone else, and Hayes' teacher just lied and said the victim was Luna. That would mean that Luna is still out there, and the cops are none the wiser again. Is Dylan working for Luna? Luna had a lot of daddy issues. We could see her sending her accomplice Dylan to his house, just to see if Dr. Finn is sad over her death or gather intel on her rivals Elektra Forrester, Linnea Grace, and Steffi Forrester, Jacqueline McInnes Wood. The interrogation room was cold, sterile, and smelled faintly of old coffee and fear. Luna pulled her delicate silk shawl tighter around her shoulders, the fabric feeling flimsy against the heavy accusation leveled against her. Across the steel table, Detective Sanchez's gaze was relentless, boring into her with the certainty of a man who believed he already knew the truth. We found his phone, Luna. Burned, wiped clean, tossed into the Pacific off the Malibu coastline. Just like you two planned, Sanchez stated, his voice flat. Dylan isn't the killer. We get it. He's the one who cleaned up the scene. He's the one who disposed of the body. There was no body, Detective. Luna whispered, her voice raw. The denial had become a mantra, a fragile shield against the world that now saw her as a beautiful, dangerous accomplice in the disappearance and presumed murder of Thomas Forrester's ruthless new business partner, Roderick Vance. Sanchez leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Roderick Vance vanished the night he signed that catastrophic merger agreement, leaving the Forrester Creations' future hanging by a thread. You and Dylan were the last people to see him alive. You had motive, Luna. You were furious about the merger. You saw how it destroyed Hope's line. Luna closed her eyes, a sharp image flashing behind her eyelids, the glint of the broken antique vase, the spilled red wine, the frantic, terrifying, whispered planning. It wasn't murder. It was so much worse. It was desperation turned into irreversible action. I only loved Dylan, she finally said, her voice trembling. I would never let him hurt anyone, and he would never hurt me by doing something so dark. Meanwhile, in a shabby coastal safe house, Dylan sat hunched over a flickering laptop screen, the sound of the waves outside a monotonous, guilt-ridden lullaby. The headline glared back at him in bold, blood-red letters. Forrester heiress Luna Noella arrested in Vance murder probe. He hadn't been on the run. He had been building the case meticulously, patiently. He was the scapegoat, the patsy, the man expected to do the dirty work. But he wouldn't let Luna go down for a crime they didn't commit, even if the world believed the narrative of a passionate crime of jealousy or corporate espionage. A chime echoed from the laptop. A secure, encrypted message flashed onto the screen. The package has been delivered. The evidence has been placed. You must move now, or she sinks alone. You gave your word. Dylan's hands shook as he typed his reply. I'm on my way. We finish this together. He stood up, looking at his reflection in the cheap mirror. Gaunt, unshaven, but with a fierce, almost manic determination in his eyes. The black duffel bag holding the truth lay ready at his feet. The world thought he was covering up a murder. They had no idea he was covering up an act of corporate espionage so massive it would bring down half of the Los Angeles fashion elite. The press conference and the unexpected return. Hours later, the Forrester Creations boardroom was a whirlwind of cameras and flashing lights. Ridge and Brooke stood grim-faced, attempting to minimize the damage from the Vance incident. Hope, her face pale, defended Luna's innocence with fierce loyalty. Suddenly, the heavy glass doors burst open. Dylan walked in, flanked not by police, but by a stern-looking man in a sharply tailored suit, a high-powered, non-extraditable defense attorney from Geneva. The room fell into stunned silence. Dylan, you self-serving coward! Thomas roared, surging forward only to be held back by Carter. Dylan ignored the hostility, walking directly to the podium. He placed the heavy duffel bag down, and the metallic clunk echoed through the room. I know what you all think, Dylan stated, his voice ringing with forced calm. You think I killed Roderick Vance and Luna was my panicked accomplice. You're half right. Luna is my accomplice, but we're not accomplices to murder. He unzipped the duffel bag and pulled out stacks of neatly organized documents, all bearing the distinctive, forged signature of Roderick Vance. Roderick Vance is alive and well, Dylan declared, but more importantly, he never existed. The collective gasp was deafening. Brooke stumbled back. Ridge's face went white. Vance was an elaborate phantom, a corporate illusion created by an outside firm. Not to merge with Forrester Creations, but to gut it, Dylan explained, his eyes locking onto Hope's. Vance's disappearance wasn't a murder. It was the final stage of an exit strategy. The night he signed the merger papers, he was signing away ownership of Forrester Creations to a shadowy investment group led by none other than a former CEO who was trying to reclaim his throne. He paused for maximum dramatic effect. The person who signed those papers in Roderick Vance's name was actually a professional corporate impersonator named Alistair Finch. Luna and I discovered the fraud when we realized the merger terms would bankrupt the company within 6 months. When we confronted Finch, he panicked. The confession of the accomplice. Back at the precinct, Detective Sanchez watched the live broadcast with mounting frustration, then turned his attention back to Luna. Her posture had shifted, a flicker of relief, but also a deeper, more profound fear. If Dylan's telling the truth and Vance is an alias, then what was the cover-up, Luna? Why the silence? Why the burned phone? Sanchez pressed. Luna finally broke. Tears streamed down her face, but she spoke clearly. Covering up the accident, she confessed. Finch, Alistair Finch, was high that night. He was celebrating what he thought was a successful fraud. When Dylan confronted him, Finch lunged for the documents, tripped over the rug, and hit his head on the fireplace mantel. It was an accident. He was bleeding profusely. We knew if we called the police, no one would believe it was an accident. We were already suspects in the corporate espionage case, and Finch was a man who didn't officially exist. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, the expensive silk catching the light. Dylan told me, Luna, this man is not Roderick Vance. His identity is fake. The only thing he carries is the evidence that saves Forrester Creations. He made a choice. Save the company and cover up the accidental death of a phantom, or tell the truth and let the company fall while we both went to jail for a death the world would call murder. So, you too made Finch disappear? Sanchez asked, eyes narrowed. Dylan did. He moved the body, cleaned the room, and erased all traces of the confrontation, Luna admitted, her voice hollow. He took the risk so I could focus on gathering the real evidence to expose the corporate takeover. I was his accomplice in deception and disposal, detective, not in murder. The real enemy. The boardroom erupted in chaos as Dylan completed his presentation, detailing bank transfers and shell corporations. The shadowy investment group led back to a name that sent a tremor through the Forrester family. Bill Spencer. Spencer was trying to buy the company for pennies on the dollar, using the Vance alias to make it look like an external threat, Dylan explained. He wanted to humiliate Ridge, destroy Hope's legacy, and put Brooke in an impossible position. He created the financial trap, and Alastair Finch was the disposable pawn. Just then, a sleek, black car pulled up to the curb outside the precinct. Bill Spencer, impeccably dressed and smirking, walked into the building, followed by his own attorney. Well, detective. Looks like your little murder investigation has gone sideways, Bill drawled, stopping just outside the interrogation room. Sanchez, realizing the magnitude of the corporate fraud, signaled his officers to move. Mr. Spencer, we need to ask you about the identity of Alastair Finch and the intended fraudulent acquisition of Forrester Creations, Sanchez said, trading the murder investigation for a corporate crime of the century. Bill merely chuckled, looking directly at Luna through the one-way glass. Luna, dear, you should know that in this town, the only thing worse than committing a crime is covering one up. And you just admitted to obstructing justice and disposing of a body. Your little boyfriend may have saved the company, but he didn't save you. The chilling realization hit Luna like a physical blow. Dylan had risked everything to clear her name of murder, but the truth they revealed had condemned them to another, albeit lesser, crime. They were not killers, but they were criminals, tied forever by a secret sealed in deceit, a love sealed in fire. Later that night, the bail had been posted for Luna, paid in a surprising act of loyalty by Hope, who had just inherited a temporary controlling interest in Forrester Creations due to the chaos. Luna found Dylan waiting for her in the darkened parking lot, the wind whipping his dark hair. She ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck, burying her face in his jacket. "We're in trouble, Dylan," she whispered, the relief and terror mixing in her voice. Dylan held her tight, savoring the moment before the storm. "We always were, but now we face the right enemy. Bill Spencer isn't going to let this go. He's going to use the accidental death, our cover-up, as leverage to get the company anyway." He took her hand, his fingers tracing the promise ring she still wore. "When I moved Finch's body, I didn't just hide him. I placed the evidence, the original, validly signed merger document that preceded the fraudulent one, in his jacket pocket. It's the only proof the first merger was legitimate and that Bill's second attempt was fraud. And the body?" Luna asked, her eyes wide with dread. Dylan looked out at the city lights, which seemed to mock their tangled fate. "I put Finch where no one could find him until the truth was safe. I buried him on the property of the only man who could keep him a secret long enough to use him as a fail-safe, the one man who would hate Bill Spencer more than he hates us." "Who, Dylan? Who is strong enough to keep that secret?" Dylan turned, a weary, determined look on his face. "We didn't kill anyone, Luna. But to save Forrester Creations and clear our names completely, we have to rely on a monster. We're bound to Bill Spencer now, but we are also bound to Sheila Carter." The dark name hung in the night air, the ultimate soap opera twist. Dylan and Luna's escape from a murder charge had only trapped them in a much more dangerous alliance, their love sealed not by a kiss, but by the shadow of the accomplice and a secret buried deep in the heart of the city's most infamous villain. "What have we done?" Luna breathed. "We bought time," Dylan said, pulling her close. "And now we fight fire with fire. Spencer was trying to buy the company for pennies on the dollar, using the Vance alias to make it look like an external threat," Dylan explained. "He wanted to humiliate Ridge, destroy Hope's legacy, and put Brooke in an impossible position. He created the financial trap, and Alastair Finch was the disposable pawn." Just then, a sleek, black car pulled up to the curb outside the precinct. Bill Spencer, impeccably dressed and smirking, walked into the building, followed by his own attorney. Well, detective. Looks like your little murder investigation has gone sideways, Bill drawled, stopping just outside the interrogation room. Sanchez, realizing the magnitude of the corporate fraud, signaled his officers to move. Mr. Spencer, we need to ask you about the identity of Alastair Finch and the intended fraudulent acquisition of Forrester Creations, Sanchez said, trading the murder investigation for a corporate crime of the century. And the body? Luna asked, her eyes wide with dread. Dylan looked out at the city lights, which seemed to mock their tangled fate. I put Finch where no one could find him until the truth was safe. I buried him on the property of the only man who could keep him a secret long enough to use him as a fail-safe, the one man who would hate Bill Spencer more than he hates us. Who, Dylan? Who is strong enough to keep that secret? Dylan turned, a weary, determined look on his face. We didn't kill anyone, Luna. But to save Forrester Creations and clear our names completely, we have to rely on a monster. We're bound to Bill Spencer now, but we are also bound to Sheila Carter. The dark name hung in the night air, the ultimate soap opera twist. Dylan and Luna's escape from a murder charge had only trapped them in a much more dangerous alliance. Their love sealed not by a kiss, but by the shadow of the accomplice and a secret buried deep in the heart of the city's most infamous stone conservatory was thick with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and the damp chill of a November evening. Rain lashed against the arched glass panes, sounding like 1,000 frantic whispers. Inside, under the single, weak yellow glow of a salvaged street lamp, Electra sat on a wrought iron bench, waiting. She was the picture of cool, contained elegance, her hands clasped neatly, her spine straight, but the slight, almost imperceptible tremor running through her left arm betrayed the seismic anticipation gripping her. She had been waiting for 20 minutes, but she had been waiting for this conversation for 3 years. Dylan entered without a sound, his silhouette blotting out the flickering light from the hallway. He looked impossibly tired, his shoulders slumped as if carrying the weight of the granite building itself. He was wearing the same charcoal wool coat he'd worn on the day everything changed, a detail Electra noted with a sharp, involuntary intake of breath. "Thank you for coming, Electra," Dylan said, his voice a low, gravelly sound that seemed to struggle against the sound of the rain. "You said it was urgent, that it couldn't wait another hour," she replied, her voice steady, betraying none of the chaos churning within her. "The news must be significant, Dylan. I haven't seen you in person since the funeral." The mention of the funeral, of Marius, was a deliberate strike, designed to cut through the veneer of politeness they had maintained over impersonal emails. It was the wound they both carried, the tragedy that had severed their friendship and destroyed a whole circle of lives. 3 years ago, Electra's younger brother, Marius, had died in a single-car accident on a deserted coastal road. It had been ruled a tragic loss of control on a wet night. Electra, Dylan, and Marius had been inseparable since childhood. Now, 2 were left, bound by a silence that felt heavier than any grief. Dylan didn't flinch. He walked over to a planter filled with dormant ferns and touched a dry leaf, his hand shaking visibly now. "It's more than significant, Electra. It's the truth. The one thing I should have given you that night, the thing I've been running from." Electra finally unclasped her hands. "I don't understand." The police report was conclusive. Marius was tired, it was raining, the car hydroplaned. It was an accident. We all accepted that. Did you? Dylan finally turned, his eyes dark and hollow in the dim light. Did you really accept it, or did you just find a convenient place to put the blame? A cosmic fault, an act of God, anything but a person. He took a slow, painful breath, and the tension ratcheted up, so high Electra thought the conservatory glass might shatter. I accepted it because I needed to, because the truth would have destroyed everything, and I was too afraid to be the one to light the fuse. "Dylan, stop speaking in riddles," Electra commanded, standing up. Her voice didn't rise, but the steel in it was unmistakable. Tell me now, what is the truth? Dylan looked directly at her, and in that instant she saw not the successful architect he had become, but the terrified, reckless boy from their teenage years. I was there, Electra. I was in the car. The world dissolved into the roar of the rain. The words were simple, yet they were an act of violence. Electra stared at him, her mind struggling to process the impossible claim. Marius had been alone. The police confirmed it. No, you weren't. The car, the wreck, it was just Marius. You were at your firm's annual dinner in the city. You had an alibi. You were giving a speech. The speech was pre-recorded. The dinner ended early. Marius called me. He was angry, drunk. He'd just had a terrible fight with his father about his college fund. He needed to get out of the city. He needed a ridiculous escape. I found him parked outside the old lighthouse. I got in. I tried to talk him down. Dylan moved closer, his urgency palpable. He was speeding, driving like a maniac, weaving all over the road. I was screaming at him to stop. He laughed and said, "If I go, we all go." I panicked. I grabbed the wheel, just for a second, trying to pull the car straight. He stopped, unable to push the final words out. "What happened, Dylan? Finish it." Electra felt a strange, cold calm descend upon her, the calm of absolute horror. I didn't pull it straight. I jerked it. I overcorrected. I felt the back end slide. When I realized he'd lost control, I kicked my door open. Before the car hit the embankment, I rolled out. I hit the asphalt hard. I was concussed, bleeding, broken. But I was alive. Electra swayed, catching herself on the cool, unforgiving surface of the bench. "You left him." "No." I crawled back. The car was upside down, steam everywhere, the smell of gas. Marius was trapped. I tried to get him out, but he was pinned. He was still conscious, Electra. He looked at me, and he knew what I had done, even though it was an accident. And I knew that if I stayed, I would go to prison. I knew the shame would destroy my parents, my career, everything I had worked for. I was selfish. I was a coward. His voice cracked completely. I saw headlights approaching. I couldn't risk them finding me. I ran. I ran through the woods, back toward the city, hitching a ride, cleaning myself up and fabricating the timeline I gave to the police. I let them believe it was a tragic, solitary mistake. Dylan's confession was not just a narrative of events. It was a confession of character, a devastating admission of cowardice and self-preservation at the cost of the truth. The car crash was the accident. The cover-up was the crime. Electra looked at the dark streaks the rain was making on the glass, each one mirroring the tears that refused to fall from her own eyes. She thought of her mother, who still visited Marius's grave 3 times a week. She thought of the charity she had founded in Marius's name, dedicated to safe driving awareness. Every single memory, every act of grief, every moment of misplaced sorrow was now tainted, poisoned by the knowledge that the man standing before her had orchestrated the lie. "You let me grieve the wrong loss," she whispered, the words barely audible over the wind. "The loss wasn't just Marius. The loss was you too. You died that night when you chose silence." "I know, and I deserve every word," Dylan said, sinking onto the bench across from her. "The guilt, it was a cancer. It started small, but it metastasized. I see him every time I close my eyes. I hear his final words." "What did he say?" Dylan swallowed hard. He didn't scream. He just said, "Tell them it was me, Dill. Just tell them it was me. I don't want you to ruin your life too." He was trying to protect me, even then. And I took it. I took his final generosity and used it as my shield. The profound horror of the revelation was not just that Dylan caused the crash, but that Marius in his last moments had given him the perfect lie, and Dylan had been weak enough to stood up fully, her body trembling with a sudden, devastating clarity. She looked at Dylan, but the man she saw was a stranger, a ghost. "You're wrong, Dylan," she said, her voice rising now, filling the vast space. This isn't about hate. Hate is too easy. This is about accountability. You chose to live a lie, and you chose to let my entire family live in a fog of misunderstanding. You think telling me is the end of your penance? It's the beginning of mine. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. The news today will be shocking, Dylan. Truly shocking. Because it won't just be your confession to Electra. It will be Electra's confession to the world. She pressed a button, opening a pre-drafted message that had sat dormant for weeks, written out of a flicker of suspicion she'd always carried. She had researched the crash site, found witnesses who recalled a second figure, compiled the scant evidence the official report had overlooked. She just hadn't had the final piece of the puzzle, Dylan's own voice. You see, I never entirely believed the report, she continued, tears finally spilling over, hot and stinging. I knew Marius would never put his friends in danger. I always suspected there was someone else. And now I know. She held the phone up, her thumb hovering over the send button. The message was addressed to a journalist she trusted, a colleague who had promised discretion until she had irrefutable proof. What are you doing? Electra, please. Think about what this does to your parents, to Clara, to everyone. Dylan lunged forward, but she took a step back, holding the phone like a small, deadly weapon. You thought about yourself 3 years ago, she said, her voice now a sharp, clear instrument of pain. Today, I'm thinking about Marius, and the truth he tried to save you with. I won't dishonor him by protecting your selfish peace. With a single, decisive movement, she tapped the screen. Send. The small chime of the notification echoing in the massive stone room was the sound of the world cracking open. Dylan stared at the floor, his head bowed, the fight gone out of him, finally unburdened and utterly ruined. The rain outside suddenly seemed to intensify, washing the glass clean. Electra stood there, a solitary figure in the yellow light, the recipient of a devastating truth and the unwilling messenger of a public catastrophe. The peace of their false reality was shattered. The news wasn't just shocking, it was revolutionary. It would reshape every relationship, every memory, every future. The confession was over, but the fallout had just begun. Electra knew, with chilling certainty, that this single, honest minute would define the rest of their lives. She put the phone back in her pocket, turned, and walked out into the rain, leaving Dylan alone in the jasmine-scented, echoing silence of his own destruction.